On Christmas Eve, my son looked me in the eye and said I wasn't invited to dinner, so I quietly canceled his mortgage. I didn't yell, I didn't beg, I just walked out, knowing exactly what I'd do next. A few days later, every guest at their holiday table opened a folder I hand-delivered, filled with years of receipts they hoped I'd forgotten. And that moment, that was just the beginning of a reckoning none of them saw coming. Before we dive into this story, don't forget to hit subscribe and drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. It had been quiet, too quiet for this time of year. Normally, by the second week of November, my phone would buzz with messages from Travis, or even one of those overly cheerful group texts Mallory liked to send. Fortner family Christmas planning begins, with a dozen exclamation marks and a Pinterest link to table centerpieces I'd never cared for. But this year, nothing. The air in Gladwin had already turned to that bone-dry cold that made every step on the porch creak louder. The fir trees lining our street wore thin strands of silver frost, and neighbors had started hanging up lights before Thanksgiving, as if stringing up bulbs might stave off another lonely winter. I'd done my usual, replaced the porch bulb, swept the drive, laid out the plastic reindeer Maria always loved, but the phone stayed still. Maria, if she were still here, would have insisted we host, or at least stop by early with her cranberry bread. She had a way of softening the season, of making family feel like something that just happened naturally, even when it took work. The last 2 years without her had been quieter, sure, but Travis had made the effort. Until now. That afternoon, as the kettle whistled, the phone finally rang. "Hey, Lemuel," Mallory's voice chirped, bright and polished like the ones in those holiday commercials that always made me feel out of place. "I just wanted to catch you before the weekend." I tucked the receiver under my chin. "Everything all right?" "Oh, of course, just, wanted to talk about Christmas." There was a pause, too short to be natural, too long to ignore. "We're doing things a little different this year, just keeping it small, more modern. Less fuss." The kettle hissed behind me. I turned off the stove. "Modern?" Just immediate family, casual, a few friends from work. It's not a big deal." Fingers curled tighter around the counter. "I see." There was a forced chuckle from her end. "I mean, with the pandemic and how things have been, we figured it's just simpler." "Sure," I said. "I understand." She didn't pick up on the shift in my tone, or maybe she did and chose to ride right over it. "We'll drop off some leftovers if there's extra." Then the line went silent. I stood there a while, hand still gripping the phone, listening to the hum of a house too quiet. The smell of burnt kettle lingered longer than it should have. Later that evening, I wandered the halls of my home. The hallway still had Maria's framed quote, "Family is where your story begins." The holiday placemats sat in a neat stack by the kitchen drawer. I'd left them there after last year, meaning to put them away, but never finding the right time. The chairs still had the seat indentations from Ephraim's old booster. And yet, the house felt like a museum exhibit now, past tense, outgrown. The thought crept in slowly, like the first sting of winter air under your coat. When did I become optional? I couldn't shake it. I slipped on my coat and went for a drive. Didn't have a destination, just a restlessness that pressed against the ribs. Travis's house sat at the end of Acorn Bend. From the corner, I could see the lights already strung perfectly across the gutters, white and gold, blinking in polite coordination, a wreath on the door. Through the window, movement, laughter. Mallory's voice floated through a cracked window, humming along to a holiday tune I once taught Travis on the piano. And then I saw it, hanging just above the garage door. "Family friends welcome." I didn't honk, didn't park, just sat there with my headlights off, car idling quietly beneath the shade of a maple that had lost all its leaves. Later that night, I found myself back in the attic, rummaging. The box was marked XMAS 2008. I pulled out the photo album, flipped to the page with Maria's handwriting in red ink. Best Christmas ever. There we were, smiling, shoulder to shoulder in front of Travis's old house. Travis had one arm around Maria, the other holding up a wine glass. I was laughing. Mallory had just joined the family then. She was still learning to be warm. I held that photo for a long time, then, gently, placed it face down on the table. If I wasn't invited, maybe I was never really included. The roads around Gladwin were quieter this time of year, just the occasional dog walker, a flickering street lamp, and holiday lights blinking in syncopated rhythms. I hadn't done one of my evening drives in months. Too cold, too dark, no real destination. But tonight, the silence inside the house felt heavier than the winter air. So I took the keys off the hook and stepped into the driver's seat like it remembered me. Old habits took over. I drove past the church on Willow Street, where Maria used to lead the Christmas food drive. Past Halverson's Market, now closed, the windows painted with cheerful cartoon snowmen. And then, inevitably, past Travis and Mallory's. Their house stood like a catalog ad. Lights wrapped tight and flawless along every edge, glowing in precise white and blue, as if color itself were being curated. A new set of illuminated candy canes flanked the walkway. In the window, silhouettes moved behind gauzy curtains, laughing, I guessed. Though it was hard to hear from the curb, it wasn't the extravagance that caught in my throat. It was the familiarity, every brick, every hinge. I remembered choosing the dark green shutters with Travis, back when he still asked my opinion. I remembered writing the check that secured the down payment. Even helped carry the drywall up the stairs before Mallory decided the guest room needed a softer light. Now the shutters were painted white. The guest room was a yoga studio, and the man who paid for the front steps was parked across the street. Headlights off, engine running. The house looked proud. I just didn't feel welcome in it. I turned the car around slowly and drove on, my headlights still dark. Back home, the porch light flickered as I pulled up. I'd meant to fix it after Halloween. It blinked one last time before going completely out. Something sat on the doormat, a brown box I recognized from my own pantry. I leaned down. My handwriting was still on the top flap. Inside, the panettone I'd baked and delivered earlier in the week, still sealed, though the ribbon had slipped loose. Tucked beside it was a folded note. Too sweet for Ephraim's diet, but thank you. Mallory. I carried the box inside without a word, set it on the counter, stared at it long enough for the warmth of the kitchen to start softening the crust. Then I walked it straight to the compost bin. There was no anger in the motion, just gravity, a quiet understanding between gesture and finality. As I sat back down in the kitchen, the faint scent of orange peel and vanilla still hung in the air. The silence settled again, thick and undisturbed. My eyes drifted toward the hallway, where the cabinet held all of Maria's Christmas things. Her ceramic nativity scene, hand-painted in that imperfect glaze only she could make beautiful, stood on the shelf like a relic from another lifetime. She used to say, "You show love by showing up, even if they don't say thank you." Every December, she'd insist we visit every relative with something warm, banana bread, fig jam, the panettone she taught me to bake. I used to believe her, I think I still do, but part of me wondered if I'd misunderstood her lesson. Maybe love didn't always mean giving endlessly. Maybe sometimes it meant stopping before you became invisible. The checkbook sat nearby, pages well worn from years of auto-pay entries, Travis and Mallory's mortgage, the utilities I floated during those tight months, the new roof I covered when insurance fell through. I flipped past the carbon copies and landed on a blank page. Maybe this year, I'd light only the rooms I belonged in the soft lamp glow of the kitchen. I reached for a sticky note, wrote down a single sentence, and folded it neatly into my wallet. Stop giving to people who won't miss you when you stop. The screen lit up like it always did, familiar blue glow, familiar icons. But this time, the notification wasn't from Travis. It was a neighbor, Joyce Farnham. tagging me in something. I tapped without thinking. Mallory's profile opened first. Her name had a little wreath emoji next to it this season. The post was public, a photo of a panettone on a paper plate, still in the foil liner I always used. Her caption read, "Some traditions are meant to be retired, like this sugar brick." A wave of laughing emojis floated underneath, comments from her friends, people I'd never met. "That's a weapon, not dessert. Put that in the doorframe, keep burglars out. No offense, but tell your Phil to switch to fruitcake next year, LOL." I didn't react, didn't hit like or sad face or anything at all. I just turned the phone over, face down on the table, and let the soft clink echo through the room. The next morning, a holiday card arrived. No return address, but the slanted cursive told me it was from Travis. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, ran a finger under the envelope flap, and pulled out a single glossy photo. The three of them, Travis, Mallory, and Ephraim, posed in front of their tree, wrapped in coordinated red flannel. Mallory's hand rested perfectly on Travis's chest. Ephraim held a paper star with glitter glue. The card read, "With love from our family to yours, the Wendells." No dad, no grandpa, just the Wendells. I placed the card down gently, like it might shatter. A memory crept in uninvited, the way they always did this time of year. It was the Christmas Maria got sick, December 2015. She was in the hospital, and I showed up alone to Travis's house with a tin of cookies I'd stayed up baking past midnight. Their new puppy barked at me on the porch. Mallory opened the door wearing a red dress and surprise on her face. "Oh, I thought you were spending it with her," she'd said. Inside, no one had saved me a seat. Travis shifted some paper plates around and pulled a folding chair from the garage. But the message had already landed. That was the first time I'd eaten a Christmas meal off my lap in their house. I reached for the current year's photo again, stared at it just long enough to memorize how carefully staged it all was, then stood and walked to the fireplace. I didn't watch it burn, just tossed it in, turned on my heel, and left the crackle behind. In the hallway closet, my checkbooks were stacked by years. I pulled a few, 2019, 2020, 2021, and sat down at the dining table. $2, $800. Every month, mortgage, then $165 for the electric bill, $59.23 for water, $200 here and there for school supplies, field trip fees, unexpected repairs. I flipped line by line, column by column. The silence of the house only made the numbers ring louder. It was too quiet. Quieter than usual. I opened the old record player Maria loved and slid out the vinyl sleeve with her favorite holiday record. A few seconds of static. Then that familiar, crackling piano. I let the music fill the room like a ghost walking through it. Somewhere beneath the song, I heard her voice, faint but clear, from a home video still loaded on the TV's USB stick. "Lemuel," she laughed. "You always make things right, don't you?" The laugh was warm, the kind of sound that filled a house without taking up space. The track faded. So did the light outside. I reached for the remote and muted everything. And enough. I unlocked my phone and hovered over the app icon I never thought I'd care about. One tap. Delete account. A pause. Confirm. It was gone. Then I picked up the mortgage folder. Thick, worn, familiar. I placed it on the dining table like a chess piece finally moved into position. Maybe it's time someone else learned the cost of silence. It was Doreen who called. She didn't mean anything by it. Doreen never did. But the way she said it landed with a thud. "They're having a little gathering tonight. Pre-Christmas thing. I think. Saw the cars all up and down their drive. Thought maybe you were already over there." I glanced at the clock on the wall. 6:42 p.m. "No," I said. "Thanks for letting me know." We said goodbye. She hung up. I stood still. You can only be forgotten so many times before it starts to feel planned. I grabbed my coat, not out of anger, just clarity. the kind that sharpens around the edges as you age. I walked toward the corner of our street, where the pavement cracked just enough to remind you winter was coming. Their house glowed like a snow globe. Through the large front window, I could see people moving in and out of view, Travis by the fire, Mallory laughing too hard at something, plates in hands, glasses clinking. I stayed on the sidewalk, a few houses down. No need to get close. I'd seen enough from a distance before. Then the projector lit up against their living room wall. Ephraim Jr. was standing up front, pointing, narrating, a slideshow of the year, I assumed. Family trips, school projects, beach weekends. People laughed, clapped at something he said. Mallory patted his shoulder like he was giving a TED Talk. But with each photo, I noticed who wasn't in any of them. Not a single image of the man who'd bought the camera that likely took those pictures, or the one who paid for that living room wall. It reminded me of earlier that day. I'd been in the study, flipping through a set of old bills, when I heard Ephraim's voice echo down the hall. He was on the phone, maybe with a friend, or maybe a cousin I'd never met. "Grandpa wouldn't get it anyway," he said. "He's not really into this kind of stuff." I didn't say a word, just quietly closed the door. But now, under the hum of Christmas music leaking from their open windows, those words sounded louder than any carol. He's not really into this kind of stuff. No, not into exclusion, not into being erased. Funny thing about families, if no one objects, the story you tell becomes the truth. I remembered a holiday years ago, back when Maria was still alive, though sick. The Christmas when Travis insisted on something smaller, more manageable. We went anyway, showed up with a pie. They'd placed folding chairs near the kitchen for overflow. We sat there, next to the trash bin, while the real guests laughed in the dining room. That year, they kept saying family only, too. I turned back toward my house. This time, I didn't leave the porch light on. I set a chair down in the center of the living room. Not by the window, not facing the fire, just square in the middle, like a spotlight without an audience. I opened the folder, yellowed receipts, printed emails, old bills. I began highlighting them, one by one. $800, $160, $1, $40. Yellow streaks across years of invisible generosity. The last page was a copy of a tuition check, made out to Ephraim's private school. I uncapped a red marker, wrote in all caps across the top, "Paid, forgotten." Then I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling that used to echo Maria's laughter. Ephraim's footsteps. Travis's promises. If they're writing me out of the story, I'll write a new one. The folder was heavier than it looked. Not because of the papers, it was the weight of everything they didn't remember. I sat at the dining table, the same spot where Maria once set out her cinnamon rolls every Christmas morning, and opened the manila flap. Inside were 5 years' worth of sacrifices, each one neatly labeled and perfectly ignored. Yellow highlighter in hand, I dragged one line across the page. $2, $800. Mortgage, January 2019. Another, $2, $800. Mortgage, February 2019. I went month by month, line by line. My hand steady, my eyes dry. No anger, just clarity. I bought their comfort with my future, I murmured. The phone rang. Not my cell, my landline, which almost never buzzed anymore unless it was a robocall or someone mistaking me for a Mr. Fortner who hadn't lived here in decades. The voice on the other end was warm, high-pitched, like someone pouring tea mid-sentence. "Lemuel, it's Clorinda Stokes, Maria's friend from the Sewing Guild. I thought I'd see you at Travis's this year." "Didn't they invite you?" There was a beat too long before I answered. "I had other plans." She was quiet for a moment. Then, well, they missed a piece of the picture. I thanked her, as politely as I could manage, and hung up. The picture. A family portrait with the cornerstone cut out. That afternoon, I called the bank. "Thank you for calling Shoreline Credit. This is Chelsea. How can I assist you today?" "I need to cancel an automatic payment." "No problem. May I ask the payee?" "Wendell Residence, Mortgage, Wells Fargo." There was a pause. I could hear her tapping on her keyboard. You've been making this transfer for 5 years?" "Yes." "Every month?" "Yes." Another pause, then, softer. "May I ask why you're stopping now, Mr. Fortner?" I let the silence hold before I answered. Too long to be a ghost in their photo albums. It was done in under 5 minutes. Just like that. The money stopped moving. Back home, I pulled out a stack of old check copies and the printer I barely used. I scanned, printed, labeled, highlighted each amount, circled the dates next to each set. I wrote what it covered. March 2020, roof patch. November 2021, Ephraim's school uniforms. June 2022, Mallory's birthday dinner. Transferred $500 in case Travis forgot. I stapled them into packets, stamped the dates at the top. Then I wrote one word across each front page. Returned. Not as in refunded, as in rejected, as in not received with any measure of grace. These weren't records anymore. They were receipts of betrayal. I placed them all into a fresh manila envelope, the kind Maria used to organize her recipe clippings. The envelope slid easily beside her old baking tray in the kitchen cabinet, 2 legacies now side by side. Then, I took out my phone and deleted the autopay app. It asked, "Are you sure you want to remove this account?" Yes, I was sure. The sky had dimmed into a soft purple as I walked down the driveway, envelope in hand. The mailbox creaked open, rusted but dependable. I slid the prepaid envelope inside. Addressed to Travis. No return address, just a single stamp and 5 years of history folded inside. Let them read what love cost. Let them know it's overdue. The envelope came by mistake. A rare one. It was addressed to Travis, but somehow found its way into my mailbox. I recognized the insurance company logo right away. Thought it might be about the house, the one I helped them buy, the one I hadn't stepped foot in for 3 Christmases now. Curiosity pushed me past the line of propriety. I opened it. Inside was a policy renewal notice, homeowner's insurance. I scanned the document, eyes pausing on the insured parties section. Travis Wendell, Mallory Wendell. That was it. No Lemuel Fortner. Nowhere. I picked up the phone and dialed the customer service number. A pleasant woman with a tight voice answered. "Thank you for calling Evergreen Insurance. This is Lacey. How may I assist you?" "I need to verify my status on a property policy." She asked for the policy number. I gave it. A few clacks on her keyboard. "Yes, Mr. Fortner. I see this policy was originally opened with you listed as a financial guarantor, but the insured parties updated the record last year. You've been removed by the policyholder." So clean. So simple. My name could buy the roof, but not be under it. I sat back, phone still in hand, the dial tone already humming like a flat line. The memory hit harder than I expected. Travis and Mallory at the signing table 5 years ago. Mallory had insisted it was just a formality. "Just need you on here for loan approval. Lem, we'll add your name to the deed later." I'd nodded, like a man hypnotized by the sound of belonging. Later never came. It was always the plan. Smile now, erase later. I didn't move for half an hour. Then came the knock at the door. Doreen Lightcap again, holding a rolled newspaper like it was made of thorns. "Did you see this?" she asked. I took it from her. Front page of the Gladwin Gazette. A lifestyle feature. Generational shift. How one family modernized their legacy. There, in full color, was my son, my daughter-in-law, and my grandson, posed like a magazine ad in front of the house I mortgaged my dignity for. The article was breezy, upbeat, trendy. Mallory was quoted directly. It was time to move past outdated roles and old dependencies. We're building something new, something ours. My name was not mentioned, not once. I thanked Doreen, gently closed the door, and walked to the kitchen. The folder from last night was still on the table. I added the article to it. Then I pulled out every check copy, every bank statement, every faded photo where they still smiled back at me. I organized them into stacks. Tabs for each category: utilities, mortgage, education, gifts. I labeled them by year, by dollar amount, by sacrifice. They erased a man who paid to be there. Next came the digital copies. I fired up the old laptop Maria had used for recipe blogs, plugged in a flash drive I'd bought 2 years ago but never used. Each file was named deliberately: proof/lf 2019, mortgage.pdf, proof/lf 2020, education, Ephraim, PDF, proof/lf 2022, utilities, DAX/LSX. Then I slid the flash drive into a plastic sleeve and taped it under Maria's cookbook in the cabinet above the stove. If they burned the paper, I'd still have the fireproof match. Finally, I printed 12 copies of a new document, a timeline summary. Every payment, every event, every quote from the article cross-referenced with reality, the title across each one, what they never told you at dinner. I placed the dozen copies into a crisp folder. Then I labeled that folder with one word, handwritten in permanent ink: Christmas Eve. It was the tag that woke me, not the alert, not the ping, but the name. My name, glowing on the lock screen of a phone I almost never used except for weather and pharmacy refills. Lemuel Fortner had been tagged in a memory. The post was from Mallory. 5 years ago. Same time of year. A filtered photo of her and Travis on the porch of their new home, wrapped in scarves and self-satisfaction. Captioned, 5 years of building our dream, on our own terms. Proud of how far we've come. Behind them, the porch railing I rebuilt with my own hands. The siding I paid to repaint. The kitchen, whose marble countertop had maxed out my last credit card limit. I zoomed in on the photo. The countertop gleamed. $400 worth of gleam. No thanks given. No name tagged in that payment, just mine now. Tagged in nostalgia, like a footnote to someone else's fairy tale. That morning, I walked to church earlier than usual. It was the 4th Sunday of Advent. Maria would have called it the week of quiet hope. Clorinda Stokes caught me near the coffee table. "I clipped something for you," she said gently, unfolding a newspaper and sliding it into my hand. The local features section. Headline across the top: Modern Family, Redefining Legacy the New Way below. A photo of Travis, Mallory, and Ephraim Jr. under their Christmas tree. They were smiling, dressed in soft holiday tones. Everything looked curated, except the omission. I flipped to the continuation on page 6. Pull quote from Mallory. "We had to break free from generational guilt and do it our way." I read the article twice, word for word. There was no mention of the man who co-signed the mortgage. No trace of the person who paid the first 3 years of taxes. No sentence. Not even a passive phrase like, "with the help of family." Maria's photo used to sit on their mantle. Now even I was missing from the story. They didn't just forget me, they deleted me. Back home, I didn't call, didn't write, didn't rage. Instead, I opened my folder, added the article beside the others, and turned on the printer. 12 full-page timelines, month by month, year by year. Mortgage payments, utility covers, school fees. Each line was plain, but together, they roared. Then I opened a new document on my laptop. Title: Truth Behind the Tree, A Financial History. No adjectives, no accusations, just numbers, dates, and screenshots. I wrote in a voice I didn't know I had, factual, surgical. December 2018, Christmas decor charged to card number 4820, $312.47. March 2020, kitchen remodel payment, $400, credit. They had written their legacy in glitter and hashtags. I would write mine in ink and receipts. Later that evening, I returned to the article. Took a photo of one of their professionally staged shots, Mallory holding a tray of cookies, captioned, "Traditions with a modern twist." I printed it and scribbled below. Baking sheet, Maria's. Bought 1989, returned 2022. Another photo, this time of the living room with plush new chairs. Furniture, paid via Wells Fargo card, July 2021. I wasn't petty, I was precise. Each image got its caption. Each caption got a receipt. Then, I stapled the packet together. A stack of evidence dressed like innocence. On the top page, in black marker, I wrote, "Prepared for guests who deserve the truth." I slid the folder into a clean manila envelope, no return address, and left it resting against the front door. They thought legacy was what you posted, but real legacy leaves paper trails. The navy suit still fit, not perfectly. It tugged a little at the shoulders, but it carried weight. Maria had chosen it for their last anniversary dinner. That detail alone made it sacred. Lemuel slid the final folder into a clean cardboard box and taped the lid shut. He placed a small label on the front in cursive. "The truth behind the celebration. Outside." The air bit sharp, typical for December in Gladwin. He drove without music. The route to Travis's house didn't need a map. It was muscle memory now. 5 years of deliveries, fix-it visits, quiet withdrawals from his own life. 2 blocks before the house. He parked under the shadows of a dormant maple. The glow from the windows stretched into the street. Laughter slipped through the panes. He tightened his coat and stepped out. From across the street, he watched. A flicker of candlelight from the dining room. The rustle of coats being taken off. Clinking forks. Someone from the church choir. 2 of Travis's co-workers, no doubt. All of them gathered under a ceiling he helped pay for. He could make out Mallory in the kitchen, plating hors d'oeuvres. The world inside that house seemed warm and full. The air outside his lungs didn't. Still, he stepped forward. When the knock came, it wasn't loud, but it cut through the music like a fire alarm. The door creaked open. Travis stood there, jaw halfway to the floor. Behind him, Mallory appeared in an apron dusted with powdered sugar. "Dad," she started, stepping forward. "This isn't the time." "I'm not here to argue," Lemuel said, holding the box close to his chest. "Just delivering a gift." He stepped in before anyone decided to stop him. The living room quieted. Forks paused mid-air. One guest, someone Lemuel vaguely recognized from the town library board, set down her wine glass with a soft clink. Lemuel placed the box on the buffet, opened the top, and began handing out folders. "Don't worry," he said gently. "No sermons, no speeches." Each guest took one out of sheer confusion. Curiosity always moved faster than manners. Lemuel stepped back and let them flip. Inside, bank records, handwritten check stubs, copies of tuition fees, dated and annotated, mortgage transfers, electric bill covers, water system repairs. He let it sit, let the rustling pages do the cutting. Then, over the murmurs, he spoke. 5 years, over $200,000. That's what bought the roof above you, the food in your mouths, the lights on your tree. Not my name, but my effort. Silence. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. One more thing. The room hushed further, like someone had reached out and turned the volume knob on the world. He pressed play. Mallory's voice spilled into the space, too clear to be denied. "He's just a faded man with outdated ideas, a nuisance we tolerate, honestly. He's like a guest we can't uninvite without guilt." Gasps. One woman whispered, "Oh my God." Another stared at Mallory, wide-eyed. Travis's eyes darted to his wife, panic rising like steam. Lemuel waited. No one spoke. He turned to Travis, voice steady. I raised a man, but tonight I'm looking at a boy. He didn't wait for an answer. There wasn't one fit to match. He buttoned his coat slowly, deliberately. The weight of the door as he opened it felt lighter than it should have. At the threshold, he looked back one final time. You wanted a celebration without me. Now you can live with what that really costs. Then he stepped out into the December night, alone, but no longer erased. The wheels rolled over gravel like a slow drumbeat as I turned the corner, away from the glowing windows of Travis's house. No radio, no thoughts I could name, just the raw quiet that follows a burn, the kind of quiet that knows there's no going back. Inside, I imagined the slow unraveling, forks placed down mid-bite, necks craned to read the documents. Whispered names bouncing across linen-covered tables, my name, my ledger, and somewhere in that room, Ephraim Jr., my grandson, would be holding that document I labeled tuition, fall term. Would he trace the signature? Would his mind flash to the day his laptop mysteriously arrived? Or when he never had to explain why the lunch card always worked? Back inside the house, it didn't take long for the silence to grow loud. He's old, Travis said, the tremble in his voice betraying his effort to maintain control. He's confused. This doesn't mean anything. One of Mallory's charity board friends leaned forward, flipping through the spreadsheet with a practiced eye. Then why do these numbers match the bank name and routing details from your mortgage record? No one spoke. The party fractured. Little murmurs broke off like splinters from a rotting post. How did they get this house? Someone whispered. Did he really cover the renovations too? Doubt is a virus. All it takes is a pinprick. In the corner, Ephraim Jr. stood stone still holding the tuition note. The folder gripped so tightly the corners bent under his fingers. His eyes were wide, scanning. Then he turned and slipped away from the room like a child dodging a fight. Upstairs, Mallory slammed the bedroom door behind her. Travis tried to recover. He called out to guests, "Please, just enjoy the food. Let's not turn this into—" But the spell had broken. Wine glasses were left half full, plates cleared without dessert. Several guests murmured polite excuses and left, their coats brushing Travis's shoulders as they passed. Ephraim, meanwhile, had gone to his room and pulled a USB stick from his backpack, one I hadn't seen in weeks. He plugged it into his tablet, unlocking a spreadsheet titled EJ's Future Fund, adjusted, line after line. Jan, textbooks. Feb, choir trip. Mar, dental work. There, at the bottom, Dec, tuition payment complete. Merry Christmas, kid. His hand covered his mouth, the way a person shields themselves from truth they didn't ask for. Downstairs. Travis finally gave up calling my name. The phone rang once, twice. Voicemail. Outside. The driveway emptied. The lights still twinkled, but the warmth had gone cold. Like someone had pulled the fire from the hearth and replaced it with fluorescent bulbs. Across town, I sat on my front porch with Coco Maria, once called too sweet. I liked it that way. The house was dark, the way I wanted it, peaceful. No texts, no voicemails, just the clink of my spoon against ceramic. Let truth sit long enough in the room, I whispered aloud, and even the prettiest curtains won't hide the dust. The cup emptied. I set it beside my rocking chair. Then came the knock, not loud, not frantic. I opened the door to see Ephraim standing there, still in his church shirt, collar wilted, eyes puffy. He held the USB and the folder. "Grandpa?" His voice cracked. "Can we talk?" I didn't say yes, didn't need to. I just stepped aside. The newsletter came in an email Doreen forwarded with the note. "Thought you'd want to see this." I almost didn't open it. But her judgment, earned over years of quiet wisdom and well-timed glances at church, told me it wasn't just holiday fluff. There it was. Page 2 of the Gladwin Community Christmas Recap. A photo from Christmas Eve. The same living room, the same tree, same cluster of guests standing in warm, curated poses, except I wasn't there. The right edge of the photo had been trimmed. A perfect crop. The kind of edit you make when you want to keep the decorations but not the man who bought them. When they couldn't deny the truth, they simply removed the one who told it. I closed the email. Deleted it without replying. By early afternoon, there was a knock at my door. Not the usual 2 taps from Doreen, but 3. Fast, uncertain. When I opened it, she stood with her coat half-zipped, holding a white envelope. "This came to our house by mistake," she said softly. "It's addressed to them, but it has your name inside." I nodded, took the envelope, and thanked her. She didn't linger. Inside was a bank-issued notice. Mortgage delinquency. Formal, cold, templated. Second request, outstanding payment due. I folded the letter slowly, slid it back into the envelope, placed it on the corner of the kitchen table, and didn't say a word. Across town, things weren't so quiet. Travis stood alone in the backyard, smoking a cigarette he swore off after Ephraim was born. The ash trembled as the wind picked up, scattering the smoke around the same patio I installed for them 2 summers ago. Inside, Mallory and Travis were unraveling, creditors calling, unpaid bills surfacing, the illusion of self-made stability dissolving like sugar in a glass too full. Mallory blamed Travis. Travis blamed everyone but himself. Ephraim stayed upstairs, silent. At church that Sunday, there were whispers. Not loud, not cruel, just enough to notice the shift. A few of Mallory's friends unfollowed her charity blog. Some stopped commenting altogether. And me, I didn't say anything. But I saved the emails, the quiet apologies, the "I didn't know it was like that" messages. They went into a folder I named Belated Honesty. It was Ephraim's note that broke through. No stamp, just folded paper left in my mailbox. "I still remember your toolbox lessons." Taped to it was a printed photo. The 2 of us fixing the backyard fence when he was 9. He wore a tool belt too big for him, and a grin wide enough to hold the sun. On the back of the photo, he'd written, "Still learning from you." I sat on the couch that evening, photo in hand, the house wrapped in stillness. I placed it beside Maria's on the mantel, not beneath, not behind, beside, equal. Then I lit a single candle, not for grief, not for memory, for clarity. I opened a fresh notepad. At the top, in block letters, I wrote, "Instructions in case they ask for help again," and underlined it once. The envelope was thick, not from emotion, just paper. 14 pages of a drafted legal complaint, neatly stacked, signed, initialed, sealed in an envelope addressed to a firm in Spokane. I'd written it myself, every line, each figure backed by documentation, every date cross-referenced. Not in rage, but in the precision that comes from years of being quiet. I sat in my reading chair, mug warm on the side table, fingers curled around that envelope. "I wrote every word," I whispered, "but sometimes not sending is louder than filing." I set it aside, not in defeat, in decision. Later that day, I walked to the filing cabinet, pulled out the extra copies, and fed them one by one into the shredder. The steady hum filled the silence. One copy I kept, slipped it into a drawer, wrote across the cover in ink. "Not sent." They knew. Then I went outside and trimmed the hedges. The clippers were stiff, their handles cold. The bushes hadn't been touched in 3 winters. Maria used to prune them in perfect domes. Now they stood a little uneven, but they were mine again. That evening, the knock came gently, 2 taps, then nothing. Ephraim, no USB this time, no packet, just him. We didn't say much. I poured cocoa for both of us, the kind he used to claim was too grown up when he was little. We drank in quiet. He finally said, "I told Mom I wanted to spend New Year's here." I waited. She didn't stop me. That was enough. No pride, no gloating, just a peace that filled the room without asking for space. 2 days later, the mailbox surprised me. 2 envelopes, both handwritten. The first one said, "I believed the story they told me, but I saw the receipts, and now I believe you." No signature. The second one had no note at all, just a crisp $20 bill folded into a blank card. I smiled, tucked them both into the folder labeled "Belated Honesty." On the 30th, Travis appeared. He didn't knock, just stood at the back fence, the one I rebuilt when he was too young to lift a hammer. His hands were shoved in his coat pockets. The December wind did nothing to hurry him. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. I didn't answer. "I just came to say," he exhaled. I saw the spreadsheet. I looked up from my hands, now calloused again from pruning and writing and holding on. "And what did you learn?" He blinked, swallowed. "I learned I traded a father for an image." There was nothing left to say. He turned and walked away, slow and alone. That night, I pulled the envelope, the original, off the bookshelf, the one addressed to Spokane. I placed it in the fireplace, struck a match, and watched it curl. The flame danced for a moment before it quieted into ash. "I didn't need a courtroom to win," I said softly. "I needed them to remember who built the house." The flame caught on the second match. The last draft of the legal brief curled inward like it had always meant to disappear. The ink turned to smoke, the accusations to ash. I didn't flinch. I didn't film it. I just watched. "There's peace," I whispered, "in knowing you no longer need to prove the truth. It lives in the silence of their shame." New Year's morning dawned clear, brittle with frost. At Doreen's invitation, I walked across the street to a modest brunch she hosted in her backyard sunroom. A folding table held quiche, fruit salad, and a cake shaped like the number 2026, leftover mold from last year, reused with a bit of icing magic. Ephraim sat beside me, not out of guilt, not obligation, just comfort. When someone asked how we were related, I answered simply, "He's mine," and he stayed. Later that afternoon, neighbors helped us string lanterns across my porch, paper ones, colored softly, like moonlight caught in midair. As we worked, Travis drove by. His truck slowed at the corner, engine idling as he watched Ephraim and I hang the last lantern. He didn't stop, he didn't wave, but he saw. There's a kind of punishment worse than loss. It's being remembered for who you really were. 2 days later, the final notice arrived. Confirmation that foreclosure had begun. Their mortgage, once shouldered by my pension, now returned to their hands, and their silence. I folded the letter, placed it in a new envelope addressed to Travis, and wrote across the front in block letters, "Return to sender. Unpaid debts, both financial and filial. Sunday after church." Travis waited by the door. "I didn't mean to lose you," he said. I met his eyes, steady. "You didn't lose me, Travis. You gave me away. That's different." He didn't cry. He didn't plead. He just nodded and walked away smaller than he'd arrived. That evening, I stood in the living room. On the mantel, I placed a new frame. It held the photo Ephraim had sent, him and I repairing the backyard fence, Doreen's cat photobombing in the corner. It made me smile. Above it, Maria's portrait, finally dusted, finally centered. I lit one last candle for the season. "They tried to write me out," I said, "but I rewrote the ending. For me, for Maria, and for every old man who paid the mortgage of silence too long."